Shabbat Shalom. So how many of you grew up calling shotgun? What? A few hands. Is this a Western California thing? You don't know what it means to call shotgun? All right, you and your siblings, or maybe you and your friends, are about to get in the car and drive somewhere. And somebody's driver, right, obviously, usually a parent, or maybe the first kid in the friend group that got the driver's license. What is the prime territory in the remaining car? Where do you want to be sitting? The passenger seat, right? You don't want to be crammed in the back seat with everyone else. Remember in the days before seatbelt laws when you could put like 15 kids in the back seat? You want to sit in the passenger seat. And at least when I was growing up, and I thought this was more universal in America, the land of the Westerns, you called shotgun. Now what that meant is as you were strolling or scurrying towards the car, someone would invariably shout, "Shotgun!" Right? Which means I have dibs on the passenger seat. Now, the reason it's called shotgun is because that was where the person carrying the shotgun in the old stagecoach would sit while the driver drove. That way they could fend off the bandits. Anyway, back to reality. Was this now sounding a little more familiar to people? Did you have other techniques for choosing who got the passenger seat? Did you stop and draw lots? Arm wrestling? Rock, paper, scissors? Shotgun was just calling dibs? Was that what's that?
The biggest one.
The biggest one, okay, and then there was always force, right? Whoever is the fastest, whoever is the strongest, they're the ones who get the seat. Now, in my opinion, I think the institution of calling shotgun was probably designed to avoid that problem, because it is one of the inviolate rules of youth that once someone has called shotgun, it is non-negotiable, right? They've got it. You're done. And that means when you get to the car, there's no fighting. There's no pushing, because it was already called. It has been claimed. Case closed, Your Honor. Get in the back seat. Is that preferable to the pushing and shoving and fighting at the door of the car?
Yes.
Those of you who have been pushed, fought, or shoved at the door are saying yes. Those of you who were the pusher, fighter, or shover that got their way, maybe you wouldn't like this system. Maybe you were the one who was able to take that younger sibling and just bodily remove them from the front seat, stuff them in the trunk, and then take your rightful position in the passenger seat throne. Maybe. But maybe we can also begin to understand now why the hierarchies that we see in this section of the Torah kind of sort of make sense. And all of this discussion of which Levite clan is going to be responsible for the curtains and which Levite clan is going to be responsible for the pegs. And the discussion in the last Torah portion before Shavuot of Bamidbar, who is going to be standing where in the camp around the tent of meeting, who is going to be marching in what order for our travels through the wilderness. It all seems very hierarchical. It seems very stilted. But maybe it's making sense. Maybe it's calling shotgun in advance. Maybe it's making sure that everybody knows it's already been decided. It's not like whoever gets to the Mishkan first gets to start taking it down, right? You don't just rush for it, and you don't fight over it, because it's already been settled. Is that fair, though? Imagine you are not a Levite. You never get to help with the temple services. You never get to help with the taking down or the erecting of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. You never get to help with even carrying it. You're not even good enough to schlep. I mean, is that fair? Should it be allowed to call shotgun for generations? I mean, shotgun is a case-by-case thing. It shouldn't be like etched in stone, from now on, this is your family's responsibility. Done. I don't want to talk about it anymore. It does seem almost un-American. And yet it actually makes perfect sense. Because we see throughout the way the Torah describes these particular assignments, a hierarchy, if you will, And in general, the way the Torah describes different hierarchies, the Torah never establishes a hierarchy that matters. Now, I'm going to insult a lot of people here that might be Kohanes or Levites. Those don't matter. Being a Kohen or Levite is not the purpose of life. It is not the purpose of being. It's not the purpose of Torah. It is a necessary role within the community. We need to have people who are officiating at the sacrifices. We need to have people that are taking care of the Mishkan and the tabernacle and the other attendant needs. Those are absolutely necessary positions. And they are the kind of positions that in other faith traditions, and unfortunately our own as it became more corrupted, especially in Second Temple times, became a source of fighting, corruption, anger, and violence. There are records within the Talmud and Midrash of Kohanim buying their position from the Roman government to become the new head priest. They didn't last long, but it was still worth it to them and their family to get them into that status because of the corrupt perks that it would bring. There are records in the Talmud and Midrash of Kohanim racing to have the opportunity to offer a particular sacrifice that looked choice, that the cuts of that would be really nice to have for dinner. Fighting so much that people were being shoved off the ramp of the altar, breaking limbs. Fights that would get so violent that it resulted even in stabbing. Somebody shanked another Kohen for the opportunity to do the sacrifice. And that person's father had been so corrupted by the system, he said, don't take out the knife, because he's not dead yet. Remove him from the temple precincts and then take out the knife. Otherwise, you'll contaminate us all with the ritual impurity of death. Way to have priorities, Dad. Way to have priorities. There was a corruption of all of this system, which begins to show you why God tried to avoid that in the first place. We messed it up, but God tried to avoid it in the first place by assigning these in advance, because it really doesn't matter who gets to offer which sacrifice and who gets to sing which song and who carries which plank. But God knows those are the kind of things that people are going to fight about. And so God tries to remove that temptation in the beginning. We found ways around that, but that's only down to human creativity. The Torah tries to establish for us that yes, there are going to be hierarchies in life. There are going to be different people on the social scale in different places. This is going to happen. And we shouldn't think that it matters. We shouldn't value those who are higher on that social scale, and we shouldn't devalue those on the bottom. And those at the bottom should not feel that their life has been a failure. And those at the top should not think their life has been a success just because they are at the top of that hierarchy. In the book of Jeremiah, in the section that we read for Tisha B'Av, the ultimate slap in our face and to our pride, it concludes with the powerful words in that Haftorah, Al Yithalel. Do not praise yourself. If you are strong, do not praise yourself. Do not glorify. Do not brag about your strength. If you are rich, do not glorify or praise yourself for your wealth. If you are wise, do not glorify yourself or praise yourself for your wisdom. It's a bit of a head scratcher then. What if it's not about my strength, if it's not about accumulation of wealth, if it's not even about showing everyone how incredibly clever I am, then what am I supposed to do with my life? Because, that's kind of the big three. How do I measure my life? Where do I find my sense of worth? Any ideas? What you do for others, which means actually, listening to Torah, following the commandments, doing what is right, and then shutting up about it. See, the thing is, as soon as you make it something worthy of bragging, then even the Torah commandments can become corrupted, as we saw with the Kohanim and the fighting in the temple. So yes, you do what the Torah asks. The Torah asks you to keep kosher. Great, you keep kosher. You don't have to go around saying, I am the most kosher-keeping guy you've ever met. missing the point. Still getting points that you're keeping kosher, but missing the mark. You are supposed to give tzedakah to those that are in need. Not go around saying, I am the most tzedakah-giving guy you ever met. You've never met anyone who gives tzedakah like me. I've helped more people ever than anyone else around. Bask before me. Shower me with your praise and adulation. Our sages teach in Pirkei Avot, why are you taking credit for living a life of Torah? That's the only reason you're here. It's like taking a credit for breathing. You say, oh, boy, I can breathe. Look at me. Of course you can breathe. If you couldn't breathe, you wouldn't be here. Well, if you didn't do Torah, you shouldn't be here. What's the point of you? You're just taking up space and oxygen if you're not trying to live a good life. Are you going to brag about the fact that you are just existing the way you are supposed to? And indeed, are you then going to be saying that you're turning Torah into some ladder to climb for social acclaim and praise? Is that the reason you're keeping Torah? Just so your neighbors will say, wow, he's so pious. Wow, she is such a philanthropist. I can't believe how observant they are. This is your purpose? You think this is why God gave you Torah, so you'd have a different yardstick upon which to climb higher than the heads of your neighbors so that you could look down on them and they would be forced to look up at you? If you're trying to climb the Torah as a ladder for social advancement, even if you're in a community that would value such a thing, then you are devaluing Torah and you are destined to fail, because that is not the point. The point of Torah is not to give you a higher status than someone else. Remember, all the statuses were pre-assigned. They're not important. Anything that can be ranked, anything that can be measured, anything that can be used to get the applause of the masses is not something that is worth being applauded for. Instead, you have to just do what's right. Pirkei Avot also says, you do not serve God as though you are begging for a reward. You serve God because it's right, because it's good. And whether you are alone or whether you are in front of 1 million people, whether you receive praise or whether you receive scorn, it's what you do. That's what you should do. End of story. We can call shotgun and we can scrape and try and climb over each other for the front seat. And people will, because they believe that there is some benefit to that. After all, that front seat is much better than being crammed in the back. You got a better view and you got a little more leg room. We may cram and crawl over each other thinking that if I can get that promotion and shank the guy next to me, that then I can get to the bigger house and that's going to make my life more comfortable. Or at the very least keep me moving up the property ladder, which is apparently the raison d'etre for our existence. If you think, I'm going to study this so that way no one can ever look down on me as being an ignoramus, I will show them how much I know about art, about culture, about philosophy, about science, about history, and then all will be able to praise me for my intelligence. Well, you can. Someone always going to know more than you about something, but you can try to climb that ladder. But why are you? Did God craft this universe billions of years ago, carefully orchestrate all of the natural forces to bring this world into existence and you to have this life, just so you could show off to a bunch of other people? That's the purpose of existence? That's what's going to give you fulfillment? Having the better view in your vacation home? Having the fancier car? Having people sing your praises because of your intelligence? God crafted the universe for that? Or did he craft the universe so your soul would have a place for its moral and spiritual journey? A journey that would be guided by the content of the Torah, not merely its form. By the essence that it tries to teach and shape you with, not merely the mechanical performance of its outer shell. God made this world so your soul would have a place to play, to experience, to revel in the joy of goodness in a way that is simply impossible beyond this frail, fragile, and breakable world. There are experiences that can only be had here that will never be experienced in heaven, in the world to come. And those experiences that are most worthwhile have nothing to do with price tags, nothing to do with popular acclaim, nothing to do with the hierarchy of the crowd. Everything to do with your neshama and how you allow it to touch that of someone else and how you allow someone else to touch you. That's all. There is nothing that we need to scramble and fight over. No reason to call shaka, no reason to elbow each other, no reason to resent anyone else's standing in a hierarchy which is immaterial and worthless. There is lots of work to do. Most of us simply don't focus on actually doing it and chase after the vanities and illusions that the book of Kohelet tries to warn us against. But every now and then, maybe on Shabbos, maybe in a life cycle event, maybe just sitting quietly and actually thinking about yourself and life, you'll feel those sparks of meaning, of worth, of yes, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Listen to that. Hold on to it. Pursue it. Create a life that gives you more of those opportunities. It is far more rewarding than just getting the front seat. Shabbat Shalom.